Hi there, I'm your host Corinne and this is Okay But Are You Good? Where we check in on ourselves on a weekly basis to see how we're doing. Are we living our best lives or are we just trying to get by? Life has been going good, so I hope it's going good for you guys as well. This is a great year and it's already, like halfway through January or whatever. It's crazy. Time flies when you're living the dream. So let's get into it. You know that version of you that you've always dreamed about? You know, the one who's more consistent, the one who shows up for themselves, more confident, more grounded. Basically, the version of yourself that has their life together. So this week, we're talking about how to actually show up for that version of yourself. Not perfectly, not instantly, not overnight, but honestly and consistently. Because wanting change is easy, becoming it takes practice. So we've been talking about new habits we want to add, what our quarter one wants to look like, and we've thought about it, but how do we actually start these things? How do we actually make this happen? Well, you need to close that gap between intention and action. You can have all these beautiful ideas, but then you don't actually do them. So what's the point? Because a lot of us don't struggle with what we want. We know what we want. We just don't close that gap between intention and action. You might be saying things like, I'll start that tomorrow. I'll start it next week. I'll get around to it once life slows down. It's never going to slow down, babe. It's never. And if you haven't noticed, the trend is we got to work towards this motivation. It's not going to happen overnight. You got to build that up. You got to build to close that gap between intention and action. And, we might not show up for ourselves because we're afraid of failing before we've even started. Guilty. We don't want to look silly starting over, or we don't want to feel judged by others because we're restarting our lives, implementing new habits, and there's always going to be people making comments, but you let them be little negative Nancys and you be yourself, babe. You do you. Or you might be waiting to show up because you know it's not going to be perfect. You might be one of those people that has to be perfect at things right away, and if you're not, you just give up. I know I'm not going to be perfect at things right away, so I've never really had that mindset, but I've just always had to work for everything. I'm not naturally talented like that. So it's okay if you're not going to be perfect at things the first time you try it. That's why it takes practice and motivation. So don't give up before you've even started. And you might not be showing up for yourself because you don't think you're ready. Trust me, you are ready, even if you don't feel like it. No one ever feels like they're ready until they're doing it, because confidence doesn't just automatically happen. Action does. And you get confident by showing up and doing things that you want to do. You need to make changes if you want your life to look differently. And how do we make our lives look differently? Who has to be involved in that? It's you. You have to make your life look differently if you don't like how it's looking, if you want some change. And with that, you got to build trust within yourself. You have to keep promises you set to yourself. Because if you keep saying, I'm going to do this, and then you don't, you're letting yourself down without even realizing it. And confidence is something that you're either born with it, you've been built up your whole life with it. But in this scenario, it's more building up that confidence because you are continually showing up for yourself. And that makes you trust yourself and trust your gut. And know what you're doing, and to make changes to close that gap between intention and action, you have to show up for yourself. You have to do things that you said you were going to do, even on the days, or especially on the days that you don't want to do it. There's days I don't want to do certain stuff. Okay, let's use the most basic example, working out. So many days I don't want to do it, but I do it and I feel amazing. So you just have to get through that hard part of just getting to the workout to feel that the endorphins afterwards, that great feeling that you chose to show up and you did it for yourself. So make sure you push yourself to not give up, to show up for yourself, because that's how you get results. That's how you make changes in your life, by showing up for yourself, trusting yourself, and not being so afraid to not be perfect at things. and or just not be good at things the first time you try it. So we've been talking about making slow changes, not going immediate, building up to things, getting the confidence over the last few weeks. So how do we start showing up for ourselves without burnout? You need to remind yourself you don't need to overhaul your life to become the version of yourself you admire. Start with one small habit, one routine, one promise you know you can keep. And then the next steps, the next habits will be easier to follow because you'll be like, oh, I did this and it wasn't that bad. Okay, let me add something else. And ask yourself, how do I become that person? What do I have to implement? And instead of asking yourself, how do I become that person? Ask yourself, what would that version of me do today? They would show up for themselves. They would push through when they don't want to, when they're scared, because consistency beats intensity every time. I know it's annoying, but you got to be consistent. It really plays out in the long run. Consistency is key. And I've personally learned being consistent makes changes. I've stuck to my workout routines and I've seen the change in my mental and my physical health, and it pays off every time. And I'm still going to therapy and it's definitely helped, and I've gotten better so I don't have to go as frequently. It's it's once a month. There was a time I was going and it was once a week. That was a couple years ago, but I stayed consistent with it. So I was able to make the changes and learn techniques and habits, I guess, how to handle stuff and how to get through my day to day. Especially, I've learned little habits to not spiral so much. Sometimes it's hard to overcome, but I've had to work towards it. So my anxiety doesn't take over my whole life anymore as much as it used to. I used to not get out of bed for days because I was so overwhelmed. So just these little habits, these little techniques, and sticking with it really have changed how my mental health has played out. So if you can go to therapy, go to therapy. If you don't want to go to therapy, I'll always say that's up to you. And if I haven't made it clear, I've had to work to where I'm at right now. This is years in the making because I used to avoid doing hard things. And now I kind of just dive into them and hope for the best, because change is scary. Admitting that you're not so great at certain things sucks, and it's scary. So a couple years ago, there was so much change in my life and I just avoided everything and I complained about it a lot, but it was just too much at once. And I felt so overwhelmed and not like myself. And how did I fix this? I made sure I was still going to therapy. I made sure I was still doing a workout to some extent. And, I wasn't perfect at things. I wasn't perfect at change. I hate change, but I knew if this is life. I have to do hard things. I have to get out of my comfort zone. I can't avoid people or places just because I'm uncomfortable or more so scared. And I got through it. You will always get through those hard things. And that's what I had to remind myself, or I was just okay, future Corinne's going to be good. So you just have to work towards that. And it all worked out, but it's hard admitting that you screwed up, or that life wasn't perfect right away and you weren't perfect and strong and confident. I had to work towards that. I had to get through those hard moments of so much has changed. I'm uncomfortable, but it's slowly day to day, it's getting better. This new life I have. And, even just this podcast, I talked about it for so long, and my husband's okay, let's do this. Let's do this. I'm yeah, let's, any more time. I don't know. I don't think I want to do this. Back and forth. And then eventually one day I was just I got stuff to talk about. I got stuff I want to talk about, and I just went for it. And now it's just part of my life. And I really enjoy it. So do something that scares you. Get out of your comfort zone. Stop talking about wanting your life to look different and wanting change. You have to take action. If I didn't take action, I would not be talking to you right now. I would still be dreaming about this podcast. And now it's been 7 or 8 months doing it. And I love it. I can't wait for my 1 year. So remember, You don't need to do everything at once. You don't need to be perfect, and you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You just need to show up for yourself, one small step at a time. Stop talking about it, just do it. Because that's how confidence is built. That's how you get to the better version of yourself, the happier version of yourself. You are your own worst enemy. So don't set yourself back when changes can be made, habits can be implemented, because it's never going to be perfect. But you can get there as long as you work towards it and take action and close that gap between intention and action. Because this version of you that you've talked about really isn't that far away. You just got to show up for yourself consistently, honestly, and gently, and you will get there. So take action. Close that gap, baby. And make sure you ask yourself, okay, but are you good? Thank you so much for listening in. I will catch you all next week, and make sure to like and subscribe.